When you open a terminal and run commands, your system keeps track of those commands by associating them with an event ID and temporarily save them into a buffer. So when you log out from the system, it will be then written from the buffer to a file, usually in a hidden file inside user's home directory. And if you want to revisit those commands, you can simply type history in your terminal, which will display all the commands that you ever typed, unless it ran out of the history buffer size, or you cleared the history, or you deleted the history. And each command that you execute is treated as an event, and hence it will have a corresponding event ID, which will be displayed left to the commands when you type history command. And you can use that event ID to recall the history or modify history and execute it again. So if you run, let's clear the history, not the history, I mean the screen. So if you run echo hist file, it will print the location and name of the file where your command history will be saved. So history command not only displays already executed command, but can also be used to reuse those commands without typing the command. And it would be very helpful in an environment where you cannot use mouse to copy and paste. For example, let's say you have a long command, and if you cannot select, copy, and paste it, you can actually use history command to recall those commands, and we'll look into that shortly. So if you do with ls, it will show you the full path of ls command, which is inside user, binary, and ls. But if you do the same for history, it does not show that history is anywhere. So basically, history command itself is not a command, but a keyword specific to the cell that you're currently using. And because of that, the feature and the functionality of the history commands differ in each cell type. So bash is probably one of the most popular cell that comes as a default cell in Red Hat, Ubuntu, CentOS, and many other Linux distributions. So today we'll look into the history commands on the basis of bash shell, and might or might not work in the exact way in other shell. However, most of the basic functions are same across all the cells types. So you can actually type echo cell to know which cell you're using. So I'm using bash shell in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.3. So we'll look into history command based on bash shell. So let's clear the screen and type history command. So it shows me I have 44 commands that's saved into the history. And we can see that. So on this file, only portion of those 44 commands are saved, because right now the rest of the commands are saved into a buffer. And when I log out and log back in, that's when the buffer will be written into this file. The first command we're going to see is history delete. So history -d and give the event ID or ID of that particular history command. Let's say 21 is typo on the clear, so I'm going to delete that one. Delete that. Now if I do history again, that 21 is gone and it's replaced by the ls command. And if I want to, let's say, run a command 24, then I can do exclamation and event ID. So 24, this is the bash history file. Notice when I did exclamation, and let's do another one, 42, which is clear. So actually it prints the command and executes right away. But if you just want to print the command and not execute it, you can do exclamation, and let's do random 40 and P, just to print. And if you want to execute it, then you can simply do 40. So it displayed the command and also executed it. And if you want to repeat the last command, which is echo cell, you can simply type 2 exclamation. Let's do ls and exclamation twice. It'll execute ls again. And you can see it here. The command, it got executed. There's another command you can use in this format, exclamation -n. So let's look into this format. If I do history, so I have history up to 52, and whatever command that I'm going to run next will be 53rd. And if I want to, let's say, execute the command that's on 50, what I have to do is exclamation minus 53 minus 3, which is 50, and it will run echo cell command. And if I wanted to run, let's say now, this will again be part of history. So I will have, if I run history, I'll have 54 command, 53 would be echo cell, and 54 would be history itself. Now, if I want to run 41th command, then what I have to do is, so my next command that will be going to be executed will be 55th. So let me subtract 15 from there for 14. So it will be lsb underscore release hyphen a. So that's how you can use it. And let's say, for example, you wanted to access passwd file. You were able to open the file, but it's read only. Let me try to open SATA file where all the passwords are saved. So at the bottom, you will see the permission is denied and it didn't show you anything because you are not a root user. So if you want to run this command again, you can do sudo space exclamation exclamation. So what it does is sudo and then it will execute vi/etc/SATA command. So ask me for the password. And now it gave me access to the SATA file. So sometimes you might type a long command, like for example, cat etc shadow, you wanna filter something, and sorry, and permission is denied. Now instead of typing all those commands, you can simply type sudo. It ran the last command with sudo permission. So you can save a lot of time. And there's another command with the history. You could do trace route. So what it does, it from the bottom, it will start looking for the command that started the trace route, and whatever command it finds first, that's what it's going to execute. So I had trace route yahoo.com, and that was the latest trace route command, and it just executed that command. I look at the history. So I have trace route here and then trace route Google. So first it found this one and it executed that command. If you do history number, it will just display you last 10 history. It's a similar, like if you do history tail -10, same thing. And you can also use history with the grep. So if I want to display everything that had trace route, so that's the command you can use. And another command you can try is, let's say, for example, I did history grep trace route. So let's say I want to replace trace route with something else. Then what I can simply do is, in the last command, replace trace route with, for example, cat. I should have command with the cat there. So simply executed the last command, but replace trace route with cat. So you can also use it to modify your history and execute it. And if you want to search anything in the history file, history buffer, you can do Control R. It's a reverse search, recursive reverse search. So anything you search will start from the bottom. And when you type something trace route, it will display the last command that had a trace route. But if you press Control R again, it will show you another command with the trace route, Control R, and that's the end of it. So trace route, Google, you can also search and execute using Control R. Another cool feature of this history is any line of command that is stored in a history buffer or history file, it will be stored like an array in your history file, and you can access them like you access the array string starting with 0. Let's say, for example, okay, let's look at this command 72. And in this command, this is the history ID or event ID, whatever you want to call it. Trace route will be the first string of array, and google.com will be the second one. So this will be represented by 0, and this will be represented by 1. And if you have multiple arguments, then 2 and 3 and so on. For example, another command, echo hello. So it simply printed hello. And in this case, echo is represented by 0 and hello is represented by 1. And if you want to run the same command, but you want to replace hello with something else, you could do simply hello replace with world, which is fine. But you can also use that array functionality. So you can do echo, or you can simply run the last command, which is now echo world, and recall the first command. And you can type, for example, people. So what this command is doing is you're recalling the last command you executed, which is echo world, and you're only getting the first array, and which is echo space and people. Now it should just execute echo people. And if you do, let's say, for example, echo and then exclamation and 1, now it will run the echo and the last command now, which is echo people. And since we're accessing second string of the array, which is people, so it'll run the same command again. And let's say if you do echo hi, how are you, so it displayed hi, how are you. Let's say you only want to print the third string, which is r. You simply do echo, now recall the last command, but only third string, which is r. So echo r. That way you can filter out the string like you can filter the array string. And now let's do history one more time. And in this one, echo hi, how are you is 77th event. So I can also access that now, 77th event, but I want to execute something else. So now this will call for echo only because I'm accessing the first string of the array, and print whatever you like. Print whatever you like. And it will just print that. Because out of this command, I'm only accessing the 0th array, 0th string, which is just echo, and give the rest of the arguments for echo command. And this is what it printed. And on this command, you can also do echo. Now let's say you only want to access the 4th string. This is echo 1, 2, 3, 4. So you printed 4th command only. So you actually called for 4th command using the history repetition command. You can also do, in this case, since like is the last string, you can do 77, then $, echo. Oh, sorry. I called 77th, this command, and on this command, U is the last string. So when I entered $, it just printed U. But on this one, because now this is associated with a new history ID. So if I do history echo 83 and $, should print like. If you want to print, let's say only first, second, and third, and not the like one, you can simply do, you're calling 83 and from 0 to third. So it just print whatever you, and it left the like one because we did execute from 0 to third string only. And if you want to print everything, echo 83 command asterisk, and now it printed everything. You can also use, for example, you can simply do touch, recalling those commands, 83 asterisk. So it created 4 files with print whatever you and like name. And you can simply remove the same way, 83 asterisk, and it remove all those files. Echo 83, it's the same thing as you do echo 83 colon 1 to $, first string to the end, or echo 83 colon 1 to 4, because we have 4 string after the command. So they're all the same. And if you simply do echo 83 colon one dash, it will leave the last string and just print until the last one. So let's do echo, this is testing line for you. So it printed that. Now I'm gonna execute last command, but only 1 through, let's say 5. Now it only printed until this. And if I wanted to do, let's say, history echo 100 colon 224, just this bunch. So that's how you can define a range. When you type history command, you notice that history command itself is a part of history. And I have a lot. So if you're using history command a lot, then being a history as a part of command history itself, it will take a space on the buffer. It will be cluttered. So there's one trick you can use to avoid that. So if you go to your bash runtime configuration file and add one line here, export hist control and that variable and ignore space. If I do that, save it and exit out of it. So let's see if I might have to log out. So if I type history, let's do space and type ls and space history. So notice 104th command is history. So if it works, there should be no command after 104 history. Okay, so there is. Now looks like I have to really log in, exit out of it, log out. I'm logged back in now. So if you do history, so ls history exit, so it all recorded. And now if I do bash underscore history, it should also have that written. See, everything is written now from the buffer because I logged out and logged back in. Now let's try entering space pwd, printed the present working directory, space ls, space hostname. So everything. Now if we do history, see, it didn't record anything after clear and history. Now, but if I do pwd, ifconfig, hostname without the space, and if I do history, now those are recorded. So now every time if you run history or clear kind of command, if you give a space, clear pwd, then space history, then it will now be recorded as part of your history. So you can configure your bash runtime configuration file and add that line and exclude those commands that you do not need by typing space in front of it. And by default, if you run same command multiple times, it does not keep in the history. Only saved one ls command in event 120. And for some reason, if your cell is doing that, what you can do is you can add another line and type hist control equals ignore both and save it. And that way your repeat command will not be shown in the history file. If you do history -c, it will clear the history on the terminal. But since it's all written in the buffer and eventually it will be written in the file, when you log out and log back in, you will see all the history come back right up. So that history -c will only clear the history for that session. So if you type history now, everything is back. So to remove the history, you have to remove the content of this file. To remove it, you can simply go into the file and delete everything, or you can simply print a blank character into that file. So now bash history file is empty, nothing is there. If you do history, you'll still see the history because it's all in the buffer. And if you log out, log back in now. History, it's all gone. And if you do not want to record your command into bash history file, what you can do is you can also unset hist file command and now run command like, for example, pwd hostname ifconfig clear space history itself, or even history without the space, which should be recorded. So now when you ran history command itself, it displayed all the command that you typed even after unsetting the history file. But let's log out one more time and see if that commands were recorded. History, nothing is recorded. Cat bash history, nothing is recorded. So go ahead and type set hist file so that it will start recording your history commands, which is very useful, like we just saw it. So that's how you can use history command with its variation. You can use it, reuse it, modify and use it, modify and execute it, and many more. So you see how versatile history command is. Now you know the little tips and tricks about your shell history, and you can play around with it and be creative while using the history command. And we just saw how we can define the history control with the ignore space and ignore repetition command. You can also define buffer size here and many more. So if you know more tricks or tips about history, please let us know in the comment section. And if you have any comments or suggestions, you can also leave that in the comment box. So hopefully you find this video helpful. And once you start practicing, you will start learning more and more. And basically, that's how I learned Linux. I learned by doing it. So hopefully you are also practicing in your home and learning the Linux. And if you have any comments or suggestions for a future video, please let me know. And I'll see you in the next video.